Veera sir?
Another one is mine. I like this on my mobile.
Oh, okay, sir. So I guess now sir is logged in. Veera sir, are you there?
Chairman.
Oh, shall we start the program, sir?
You can begin the session now. Yes.
Okay, sir, thank you. Samira ma'am, will have the official welcome address and the introduction, and you can start the session now. Okay, thank you. Happy evening. Myself Akshay Lakshmi from the core team. I'm glad to welcome our speaker for the day, Samindra ma'am, and our dear participants. On behalf of Dr. Suresh Kumar sir and the core team members for the Mental Health Webinar Series 2020, organized by the Department of Psychology, the American College, Madurai, in association with Madras School of Social Work, Department of Psychology, Madurai Kamaraj University, MS Chalamuthu Institute of Mental Health and Rehabilitation Center, Madurai, Red Pond Educational and Psychological Research Center, Madurai, and Psycho-Oncological Association, Turkey. Now, I request Veera sir from core team to give general instruction for the participants and to introduce the speaker for the day.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Akshay ma'am. Good evening, one and all. Myself, Veera, I'm from the core team. I'm glad to intro our today's speaker, Ms. Samindra Savan, who is actually a clinical psychologist, regression therapist, transformational growth therapist, as well RECPT practitioner, and also an author who actually having many crowns like founder director of DISA Counseling Center, as well resource room head of Bhaktivedanta Swami Mission School, and also a senior clinical psychologist of Psychometrica even. So not only that, like as a psychologist, Samindra ma'am has often been invited to write on mental health, parenting, and other related topics for well-known magazines and newspapers such as Times of India, Midday Classroom, Complete Wellbeing, as well as regional newspaper like Maharashtra Times. She has been an honorary expert columnist on marital counseling for the portal www.rediff.com, and also she is the author of Taming the Tornado. It's actually a parent manual to manage the ADHD child, which actually published on April 2011. And Samindra also a senior psychometrician in a site like www.psychometrica.in, and also she's part of Bhaktivedanta Swami Mission School more than 20 years. So since he has more extensive experience and knowledge, like I request Samindra ma'am to enlighten us with today's topic. And also to have a great session, I request all the participants, please mute your video as well audio. If in case switch on the video, make sure to wear decent outfit and also not here and there, move here and there. And all your queries can be clarified in the QA session. And thank you one and all, and welcome Samindra ma'am again for the session. I request you to take over further. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this nice introduction. And thank you all of you for inviting me for this session so that I can share some thoughts and some strategies with all the participants present here today. So let me start by sharing my screen.
Yes, your PPT is now.
Yes. So we are here today to talk about anxiety management strategies. And anxiety is something that all of us experience from time to time, and all of us, most of the times, we manage to manage the anxiety and move on and take care of our tasks. But I think in today's times, the last few months, the kind of weird existence we have all been living, thanks to this little fellow on the screen, COVID-19, it has changed the way we do everything. What we thought would be a temporary situation has just gone on and on and on. I remember initially when the first lockdown, 21-day lockdown was announced way back in March, people were very gung-ho, very enthusiastic. Okay, it's opportunity for us to spend time with our loved ones, to learn new skills, to engage in our hobbies. But as things kept getting extended, the virus kept getting growing, and we kept remaining housebound, there just doesn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel. So we've all become homebound, and this is a truly strange scenario for all of us, our generation, because it's a global scenario. everything is happening virtually, be it work, be it school, be it your entertainment, be it your socializing. Literally everything is happening from our homes. So one would wonder, why would that create anxiety? Why would that add to anxiety? But I'm sure all of you present here today would have experienced that COVID has had an impact which is unique for each of us. It has had a unique impact for each of us. The anxiety that a person who's unsure about whether he's going to be able to sustain his job or not is something unique. For the students who were supposed to start their new careers, new degrees, their uncertainty is a very different kind of anxiety provoking situation. For families where one family member is stuck in another country and not able to come back home, their anxiety is different. So there's a lot of uncertainty that this situation has created, which has contributed to anxieties which are any which ways there in life, which is why we need to talk about what really anxiety is. Yes, COVID has intensified it, but it's not like there isn't any anxiety without COVID. So what we're going to do today in this session is we are going to talk more about anxiety from a general perspective. And if there are any COVID specific questions or doubts that you have, we can take those up in the Q&A session. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is actually a normal emotion. In small doses, in mild doses, anxiety helps us to recognize problems and solve them. In its healthy form, anxiety helps you to perform to the best of your abilities. For those of you who are students, imagine if there's an important exam coming and you have absolutely no worry and no anxiety. Would it really motivate you to put in your best? You would tend to be a little more relaxed, a little more chilled out, and give your best. So only when you have a little bit of worry, oh my God, exams are coming, I better concentrate. That's when you put in the best of your ability. So in some degree, anxiety helps you to concentrate your focus and perform as best as you can. It can push us to make necessary changes in our life. Problem is that when this anxiety exceeds reasonable proportions, that is when it starts becoming a problem. So let's try and understand what problematic anxiety is all about. So when we talk about anxiety in clinical terms, or anxiety when it becomes a problem, it is when there is an abnormal and overwhelming sense of apprehension and fear. There is a constant feeling of apprehension and fear that we go through, and which we can't really put a finger to or point a reason towards. Many times anxiety is marked by physiological signs. We feel anxiety more in our body. So we have a rapidly beating heart, we have sweating palms, we feel tension in our body, there is restlessness, our pulse rate increases. Many of us experience nausea or headaches or sleeplessness. So there are many bodily symptoms that anxiety creates, which makes the whole scenario extremely uncomfortable, even bodily. Then there is also a lot of doubt in the reality and the nature of the threat. What this means is there is a situation that you're worried about, but your worry tends to be completely out of proportion to what the situation really calls for. So for example, if there is a difficult exam that I'm worried about, a person with mild anxiety would be somewhat worried, but would still be able to concentrate, pay attention, and study for the exam. A person who has severe anxiety is going to go into extreme forms and start with a lot of questions which create a lot of doubt. Oh my God, it is such a difficult exam. I don't think I'll be able to do it. What if I go blank? So there are a lot of what ifs that start coming up. And the moment we start with this whole what ifing inside our head, that is when the anxiety goes into a loop and starts creating problems for us. And what happens then? We get into self-doubt. We start doubting our ability to cope with that situation or that particular challenge. We think we will not be able to deal with the challenge that is about to come. So this is what clinical anxiety or severe anxiety is all about. So like I've been saying from the outset, there are levels of anxiety. The first is the mild anxiety, which we would say is reasonable or healthy anxiety, where there is a slight discomfort, you feel a little fidgety. It also makes you a little more alert. You feel challenged. You feel, okay, this is a tough situation and I need to gear up. I need to really do something. So your entire mind and your body goes into a mode for constructive action. There is a problem. I need to deal with it. I need to mobilize my resources to deal with it in a good manner. So that's what mild anxiety is all about. When the anxiety starts going a little higher, it's a moderate anxiety. What does moderate anxiety do? It starts making us irritable. We start becoming irritated. Our fidgetiness, physical fidgetiness increases. It lowers our confidence. That makes us difficult to concentrate because there are so many thoughts rapidly running in our mind. We are irritable. We are not able to concentrate on the task. And now our system starts gearing for protective action. So you see what's happening from constructive action, which means I can deal with this, to move into protective action. What can I do to protect myself? What can I do to save myself in this situation? So you become a little defensive in the way you are dealing with that situation. When there is even more severe anxiety, you become extremely hypersensitive to what people are saying, how their body language is, hypersensitive to every little change in the situation. Your perceptions become distorted. That means your thought process becomes completely twisted and breaks from reality. For example, somebody says something small to you. For example, let's continue with the example of the exam. A person who has severe anxiety, a student who has severe anxiety, even if, let's say, a parent comes and asks, "Are you done? Is your revision over?" The student will start feeling, why is my parent asking me this? Do they feel I'm not capable? Do they feel I won't be able to do this? That means I'm really not going to be able to do this. So the slightest of reaction or action of others can create distorted perceptions, and we go into a fight or flight mode. Those of you who are from the psychology background would be aware of what fight or flight means. It is when our body or when our system anticipates a dangerous situation, our body prepares us either to fight that situation or to flight. That means to run away and escape from that situation if we process or if we analyze that we can't deal with it. Okay, so in case of severe anxiety, your entire autonomic nervous system gets aroused. All your resources get mobilized to go into either fight or flight. And then is the most severe form of anxiety, which is panic. Panic is where either you actually go into fight or flight or you become immobilized, you freeze. So the third reaction that you can give to severe anxiety other than fight and flight is you freeze. You just don't know what to do. That is when students say, I went blank. I couldn't remember a thing. When I came home, I felt I could know the entire question paper. Right? So you tend to freeze, you go blank, or you may experience extreme emotions like rage or fear. Your behavior becomes extremely disorganized and your awareness becomes distorted. So these are the various levels of anxiety. Like I said, mild anxiety, not a problem. Most of us go through it from time to time. Most of us manage it well. But when it starts getting higher and higher, it starts impacting our peace of mind, our performance, our ability to do our best, and ultimately it starts affecting our mental health, which is why we need to have effective strategies to deal with this anxiety. Moving on, now let's talk about strategies. As I already mentioned to you all, anxiety tends to affect various aspects of our entire persona or our entire system. So we have thoughts which tend to run into extreme kind of thoughts or negative thoughts or repetitive thoughts. So it affects our mind or our thinking. It affects our body. Like I already mentioned, there are a lot of bodily reactions that we give to anxiety. It affects our emotions because we go into all the negative emotions. We have fear, we have worry, we have panic, we have anger. So it affects our mind, our body, and our emotions, which is why when we talk about strategies, we try to look at all these areas. It is when you're able to handle all these areas that you will be able to bind your anxiety or you will be able to control your anxiety. So let's look at some very easy hands-on strategies that we can all implement whenever we experience any kind of overwhelming anxiety. So I'm going to talk first and foremost about physical strategies or strategies that help you to calm down your body. Why first physical strategies? Because it is in the body that you can feel it most tangibly. See, working on the thoughts at times can be challenging because the moment you try to pin down one thought, your mind has run into 10 other thought processes, right? So when you are extremely anxious, you may not always be able to work on your thinking. The best way to start is by working on your body. The first thing I would strongly recommend to all of you is any kind of breath work, be it yoga or pranayam, be it mindfulness based breathing, be it anapan breathing, which the Vipassana form of meditation practices, any kind of breath work is one of the best ways of centering yourself. What breath work does is simply basically makes you to just slow down the autonomic arousal. The arousal of your autonomic nervous system gets slowed down, calm down when you do any kind of breath work. And this can be done anytime, anywhere. You may be in a classroom full of people, you may be on stage, but it just takes you 2 to 3 minutes to just concentrate on your breathing. Help your breathing to calm down, slow down, help your body to slow down, and then move on and take on the challenge. So this is one of the first techniques that I would suggest whenever it comes to managing anxiety. Then muscle tension and relaxation. What we do here is, you can try it right now. Just try and notice if any part of your body feels a little tense or a little anxious. Just focus on that part of your body and tense it. Tense that body part as much as you can for a few seconds. And then slowly relax that body part. Move to some other organs. Just tense the body parts for some reasons. You can start with your fists, for example. Just close your fists together, hold them tight for a few seconds, and slowly relax them. Right? So this kind of muscle tension and relaxation also helps you to bring down the arousal that happens in your body because of anxiety. Any kind of physical activity, if it is, whether depending on what your orientation or what your hobbies are, if you like dancing, if you like gymming, working out, if you like any kind of aerobics or gymnastics, going for a run, going for a walk, any kind of physical activity where you're moving your body is one of the best ways to ground yourself. What does grounding mean? When we are anxious, like I said, we lose touch with reality. We lose touch with what is the severity of the situation and where is my mind jumping. So grounding means it immediately helps you to come back to the here and now, be in the present moment, and find out and build perspective. Right? So any kind of physical activity is one of the best ways to ground yourself in the here and now. Then we go on to some cognitive strategies, which is some thinking related, thought related strategies. The first and foremost, as propagated by all our cognitive behavior therapies, is to identify our thinking errors. Most of you would realize that many times, or rather most of the times, our anxiety is created by faulty thinking. So if we are able to identify and challenge our erroneous thoughts, we will be able to uproot the anxiety entirely. In therapy, your CBT therapist or your REBT therapist helps you to identify these irrational, faulty, illogical thoughts. But you don't need to, you can try doing it yourself as well. Whenever you, like I said, one of the best ways to identify your erroneous thought is to catch yourself whenever you go into the what if mode. Okay, the moment you start saying, what if this happens, what if that happens, that is a clue to you that you're thinking into extreme situations. To give you some examples of what thinking errors are like, for example, some of us tend to catastrophize. So when the situation is at an intensity of 1 or a 2, we think it is a 9 or a 10. Like I said, for example, I'm giving an exam. I don't remember or I'm not able to answer one problem, do the rest of the paper well, but my mind will focus only on that one problem which I didn't do, and then I go on to, I couldn't do that one answer, I'm going to fail. So we are jumping to conclusions based on inadequate evidence. This is one of the most common thinking errors that many of us engage in. The other common thinking error is what we call as black and white thinking. Black and white thinking is when we think of situations as either or. Either I am a great student, I get full marks. If I don't get full marks, that means I'm stupid. So either I'm smart or I'm stupid. There is no in between. But we all know life is not like that. People are not like that. There are shades and shades, not just of gray, but the entire spectrum of the rainbow, right? Between black and white. So learning to identify these kind of extreme forms of thinking help us to understand where our anxiety is coming from. The anxiety is not coming from the situation outside, but rather it is coming from how I have processed it, how I have interpreted it. What am I telling myself about that situation? This is what creates the anxiety for us. So this is one of the first things we do when it comes to cognitive strategies. Another easy technique for all of you to try is to practice scaling. Use a simple 10-point rating scale and ask yourself, how likely is this situation to occur on a scale of 1 to 10? So if I jump to the conclusion that I'm going to fail, ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that I'm going to fail because I didn't answer one question? Okay, it immediately helps you to build perspective. It immediately tells you, okay, maybe there is a possibility of a 1 or a 2 that I may fail, but the rest of the 80% chances are that I won't fail. Correct? So scaling is one of the best ways to build perspective, and it quickly helps you to come down to what the real situation is. And this is something very easy to do. You don't need a lot of expertise. You don't need a lot of training. You don't need a lot of therapy to be able to try this technique. So go ahead and try this. Next, we come to thought stopping. This is where we become aware of the thought coming up and use visualization to stop the same. I'm going to ask you all to try this right now, if that is okay with all of you. So what I want you to do is just close your eyes for 2 minutes, wherever you are sitting. Just close your eyes and just take a slow, deep breath and bring up one thought that has recently made you anxious. Just bring up one thought that has recently made you anxious. And stop there and take a deep breath once again. And observe. What am I thinking about? What is it that I am reacting to? Notice, what am I feeling in my body? Where in my body do I feel this anxiety the most? Continue to keep your eyes closed. And now consider the bigger picture. How would someone else see this situation? What thinking error can you identify here? Identify the facts. What is true? What is just in my head? And now think of what action you can take. What is the best thing I can do here for me, for this situation, and for others? And now slowly take a deep breath again and open your eyes. Okay, so this is one way in which we do thought stopping. So the acronym STOP here stands for stop, T is for take a deep breath, O is observe what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the body. The first P is perspective, build perspective, look at the larger picture. And the last P is practice what works. What action can you take that will help you in this situation? Okay, so this is one way to do thought stopping. Again, this is a technique which you can try with yourself, see how it works for you, and then continue to implement it as you go forward. Some other mental strategies, simple ones to teach you is, if you feel that you're extremely worried about a situation, let's say you have a presentation to make the next day and you're so anxious that you're not able to concentrate. This is another thing you can do, which is like create a worry box or an anxiety box. Okay, take any box, any jar, any kind of a container that is readily available with you and write down whatever you're worried about on a chit of paper, on a piece of paper. If there are multiple things you're worried about, make multiple chits, fold them, put them in this box. Okay, put all these worries in this box or jar. Give it a time that you can address these worries at a later point in time. So you can just lock it and you can tell yourself, after my presentation is over, I will come back, open all these chits, and I will then worry all I want to worry about this situation. Okay, so what this does is it gives your mind a sense of control, that you are in control of your worries. Worries are not in control of you. What happens in anxiety is it becomes overwhelming. It starts controlling you. So symbolically, if you tell your mind that, okay, all my worries, I have put them down, the moment you write, what happens is you externalize the worries. You put them out of your system and you're putting it in a box and you're locking it up. You're containing it. You're dealing with the situation. Then you come back and you open it. But do make it a point that if you have said that, okay, after my presentation, I will come back and I will look at this, you must live up to that commitment to your mind, because your mind is going to process all of this. And then when you come back and open those chits, you will realize, oh, I was simply worried. What kind of thoughts was I having? I had no need to worry. I was well prepared. Right? So this is another easy strategy that you can use to manage your anxiety. The other thing, again, is reframing our thoughts. Constantly challenge, question, confront any illogical, irrational thought that you catch up. Reframe them using more rational, logical arguments. What does reframing mean? Reframing doesn't mean that you are unrealistic. So if you have a presentation that you're worried about, you don't tell yourself, oh, it's not a big deal, I shouldn't worry, I will breeze through it. No, that's being unrealistic. Reframing means you tell yourself, okay, this is a challenge in front of me. I'm going to focus on doing my best. I'm going to focus on controlling what is in my control and go there and see what happens. That's practical. That's realistic. That's not unrealistic. So this is where many times people have an issue with positive thinking, where people think that, oh, positive thinking doesn't work. Positive thinking doesn't work when your positive thinking becomes unrealistic thinking. Reframing or thinking positively does not mean you run away from reality. If you are in a difficult situation, we accept that reality, but we focus on what can I do about this? Is there a silver lining I can look at? Right? So try reframing the situation, your thoughts, in a more positive, more rational, and more logical format. And that's going to help you to deal with that situation in a better manner. Make sure you repeat the reframed thought every time this automatic anxiety inducive thought arises. So every time there is an automatic thought, what if I fail? What if I go blank in my presentation? Practice saying the reframed thought to yourself again. I'm prepared. I'm going to do my best. I'll face what happens at that moment. Right? So constantly repeating the reframed thought is going to help you to internalize it over a period of time. Remember, every anxiety provoking thought is an automatic thought. We don't consciously think these thoughts to become anxious. It's just the way our brain has been programmed. We come up with that automatic thought. So to erase the strength of that automatic thought, we have to rehearse, repeat, reframe all the time so that we are able to erase the trace of that automatic thought. I think all of you are aware of what self-talk means. Self-talk is the way we constantly dialogue with ourselves. Our internal dialogue with ourselves is what referred to as self-talk, and it determines how we react to situations. Most of the times, for all of us, we constantly tend to be very critical and negative self-talk. So we all have an inner critic. We all have this inner judge who's constantly saying to us, how could you be so stupid? How could you have done this? Couldn't you even understand this much? In a way, it's good because it keeps us on our toes. It keeps making sure that we are doing the right thing at the right time in the right manner. But if this critical voice, if this inner critic, this inner judge sitting inside our head becomes very strong and starts dominating, then what happens is it erodes your confidence from inside. It makes you believe I can do no good. So then you need to change your self-talk. You need to remember that this critic has a role to play, but it cannot swamp your personality. So you have to change the way you're talking to yourself and be more, again, practical, realistic, and positive and affirmative in the way you're speaking to yourself. Then we come to emotive or feeling-based strategies, where the most important thing is get to the underlying emotions. Usually anxiety tends to mask deeper fears. So what is it? What about this situation scares me? So if I'm not able to do the presentation well, is it actually the presentation I'm worried about? Or what am I worried about? If I don't do the presentation well, does it mean that I will be judged poorly by my boss? I will end up not getting the promotion, and that means I will not get the salary hike. What is it that I'm actually scared of, worried about, or afraid about? We are able to identify the underlying emotion and the reason for that underlying emotion that helps us manage the anxiety better. Then what we do is we try to do a cost benefit analysis, focusing on our emotions. So if I'm afraid of something, then I ask myself, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen if this situation comes true? Allow yourself to face the worst case scenario in your mind. Anxiety happens when you ask yourself, what if the worst happens? And your body goes into a hijack mode. The anxiety hijacks your body. Instead, allow yourself to visualize the worst case scenario. Okay, the worst thing is I will fail this exam. What will happen if I fail this exam? If you face this question and come up with an answer, you will realize that yes, if I fail this exam, it's going to be very embarrassing, very terrible, very bad. I will lose a year, but it's not the end of the world. Right? And then you also look at the best case scenario. What's the best thing that can happen in this situation? The best thing is I will come out with flying colors. Correct? So there is a slight possibility that the worst will happen. There is a slight possibility that the best will happen. But the reality may be somewhere in between these two possibilities. Doing this cost benefit analysis, keeping your emotions at the center, will help you once again to understand that I'm getting worried or worked up about unnecessary possibilities. A 1% possibility that I may fail is making me so anxious that the 99% possibility that I won't fail, for which I require to put my best efforts, I'm not able to put. Right? So try and use this kind of logical analysis whenever you identify the emotion. Some behavioral strategies, some easy things you can do when none of this works, write it down. Putting your thoughts into a diary or journaling your thoughts, it helps, again, like I said, to externalize your thoughts and enables you to look at them more objectively. Be more organized. Many times anxiety stems from lack of planning and organization. This is especially true for students who may not have worked their best through the semester or through the year, and then last minute there is anxiety and panic because you know you've not put in your best. So if your source of anxiety is not being organized, then spend time in getting more organized so that you can manage your anxiety better. I'm sure all of you have come across this circle of control. It floats on the internet very often. From time to time, you see this image coming up in some form or the other. And it is a very, like I said, a very common image and a very common concept, but it is really a useful concept. Whenever we are anxious about a situation, if we are able to focus on this internal circle, what is in my control, right? Doing my best is in my control. Remaining calm is in my control. Focusing is in my control. My feelings, my ideas, my beliefs are in my control. Let me work on that. What is beyond my control is anyways beyond my control. How other people react, what other people say, what the situation is like, none of this is in my control. If I'm going to keep focusing on what's not in my control, I'm going to feel more and more anxious. So, narrowing your focus into that inner circle, which is in your control circle, will help you to release a lot of your anxiety. Some other simple best practices, none of this, what I'm talking about now, is rocket science. I'm sure most of you in some or the other form practice this and you know it works. But these are so simple yet so effective practices that it bears mentioning them again. First and foremost, take care of your body. Make sure you're eating well-balanced meals. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you have good physical exercise or physical activity so that your body is centered, your body is in harmony with your mind. Develop courage and tact to say no if you feel you're being pressurized by others. Many times people who can't be assertive, who can't say no, tend to experience a lot of anxiety because they feel pressured to do things they don't want to do or they don't have time to do. So becoming more assertive, developing assertiveness, saying no when required helps you to ensure that you don't get into situations which creates anxiety for you. Like I said already, learn the art of time management. I can't repeat it often enough. Prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. Do what works. Inculcate the habit of keeping a to-do list. You can use a physical planner, you can use your phone, you can use your calendar on the laptop, whatever works for you. Ensure that the most important and urgent things get done first in your day so that you don't get into a panic mode. Practice Because if you don't, the quest for inner balance, being calm, will always be an endless battle. Remember, you are at the center, and all other activities that you are doing emanate from you and end at you. So it is up to you to figure out how to strike this balance. Am I doing too many things? Am I burning the candle at both ends? Is there something I can give up for the moment so that I can focus on doing the other tasks in a calm manner as well as give time to myself? Right? So self care is the most crucial and the most difficult for many of us to implement, because we are all living in a world where we are so used to being busy, which is one of the reasons why COVID has created so much anxiety, isn't it? Because suddenly we are just all restricted in the activities. We have been, now things have opened up, but the first couple of months we were all in an essential services mode, right? And many of us didn't know how to deal with it because we've made our lives so busy. So make sure you give enough time for self-care. Simplify your life, be clear about what needs to be done, when it needs to be done. Understand what are the negotiables and non-negotiables in your life. For example, what this means is, what are things that are absolutely necessary for me? These are some things that I need to prioritize. Focus on them. The things that are good to have but can wait or can be given up, don't get stressed about those. So once you have this clarity, once you build this clarity, it will help you not to get anxious over things that are not important for you. Some other solutions? Count slowly to 10. Yes, this age-old technique given by our grandmothers and grandfathers still works. When you feel your mind is going blank or your mind is frozen and you can't think because of anxiety, just close your eyes and slowly count from 1 to 10. What it does is the thought stopping, which I talked about some time back. This is just a very effective and simple way to get the thoughts to stop. Okay, so this is a technique that works. It's a very, very common and very oft used or repeated technique, but it does work. Inculcate humor. Have a humorous way of looking at yourself, looking at the world and the situation around you. Remember, a good laugh can go a long way in diffusing your worry. Lean on your support system from time to time. You have people around you, be it family, be it friends, be it colleagues, be it your mentors, your guides. Sometimes all you need to do is talk, vent, cry. These are simple acts, but they can help release anxiety. Set aside one night each week for recreation. Now, depending on what phase of life you are in, whether you are a working professional, whether you're a student, whether you're a homemaker, whether you're a self-employed person, we all have busy schedules. And I know it's very easy to say, make time for yourself, but it's hard to implement. But if we make that commitment based on how much ever busy we are, how full our plate is, that okay, every week, at least half an hour I can give myself, 2 hours I can give myself, whatever is possible for you. I'm not saying every day because I know that's not possible. But having that thing to look forward to, okay, every Friday evening is going to be my me time. I have to sit with a book and read. Just knowing that that time is available helps you to calm down because it's something you look forward to. Right? So make sure there is something in your schedule in the week which is completely for your sake. Connect to loved ones, especially in these times of COVID, where we are talking about social distancing. Please remember, my friends, social distancing does not mean social isolation. Social distancing does not have to mean loneliness. Yes, we have to practice physical distance, but we can still be emotionally connected. And isn't the human resourcefulness so amazing? We found so many ways to connect. Thanks to technology, virtually we can still be at the same place, at the same level, at the same wavelength. So whenever you feel anxious, whenever you feel you're stressed and you're tired and frustrated, just find time to connect to somebody you care about, somebody you know will understand. That helps you to bring down your emotions to a calmer zone. Most important, also know when to seek help. Remember, clinical anxiety will need professional intervention. So if it is a day-to-day anxiety that you're dealing with, or you feel you have an anxious personality and you feel your anxiety gets in the way, I need to do something about it, practice these strategies, great, it will work. But if it is clinical anxiety, which means how do we know whether it is clinical anxiety? 2-3 basic things you should keep in mind. If your anxiety is persistent and overwhelming, if it interferes with your daily life to a significant extent, if as a student you're not able to concentrate at all, you're not able to do your best at your studies, or you're not able to do your best at work, or it is starting to impact your relationships, your socialization, then don't hesitate to talk to a professional, any kind of mental health professional, be it your counselor, be it a therapist, be it a psychiatrist. But if you feel this anxiety is getting out of hand, make sure you seek professional intervention, because at that level, it will require professional intervention. And with that, I'm going to pause now. And we can take questions if any.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful session. Of in the consent topic. Yes, I request all the participants who are all have doubts, you can very well unmute yourself, and or else you may put it in the chat box also. There are many appreciation pouring in the chat box now.
So,
Excellent session, wonderful session. Thanks. There are many appreciation pouring in the chat box.
thank you so much.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Kirti. I just wanted to ask, can anxiety be a hereditary issue, or does it always develop according to age and situations?
So, unfortunately, in case of any mental illness or any mental conditions, we really don't have a proof as to what is the cause. There is no identified virus or bacteria that causes the situation. But where anxiety is concerned, we have seen that it could at times be hereditary, but also a lot of anxiety actually comes from modeling. So, for example, if I have an anxious parent, I may also become anxious not because I share the same genes, but because I have observed my parent reacting to every situation with anxiety. So, as children, we pick up a lot of things from our parents. So, a lot of it comes from modeling or being in the presence of people who feel anxious, that can create anxiety. And there is found to be some genetic connection as well, but that's not a very strong genetic connection.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, ma'am. One more question from Mr. Ashwin. Frequently, I get energy down in class. Can you suggest something? I'm not sure what is mentioned about class. Maybe he's a student.
I'm just frequently I get energy down in class. So that means when you are in class, is it? So it could be a number of reasons for it. The first thing I would explore is whether what your sleep cycle is like. If, for example, if you are not sleeping, if you're not getting adequate sleep, and then you are in class, it is very likely that your energy may be dipping due to lack of sleep, or your energy may be dipping because maybe your empty stomach, you've not had adequate nutrition, which is why I said the first thing to explore is whether you're taking care of your body. If that is in place, then you need to check whether it is anything to do with the subject or a particular topic, or whether it is anxiety that is making you feel that, and accordingly work on it.
Yes, one more question in the chat box even. Could you tell us some tips to get sleep when we are anxious?
Tell us tips to get sleep when we are anxious.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so our body react very differently to anxiety. For some people, when they get very anxious, they tend to sleep a lot. But for some people, when they get very anxious, they become sleepless, like they can't sleep at all. So if you can develop any kind of a calming sleep ritual, It could be anything. So ideally avoid being too much on your phone for at least half an hour before you go to sleep. Experts actually say 2 hours, but I know for the present generation, it is unthinkable that 2 hours before sleep, you won't be on your gadgets. But at least for half an hour, try to be without a gadget. Any kind of soothing music or any kind of a sleep ritual, maybe reading something or talking to some family member, spending time, if there's a small child in the house, spending time with a small child. Create a ritual for yourself which helps your mind to slow down and your body to slow down, and then go to bed. That will help you to go to sleep faster.
Yes, ma'am. One more question in the chat box even. They want you to explain the scaling technique again, since you have already explained, but they want you to.
Yes. So scaling
Little more.
technique means if there is a particular situation that I am getting anxious about, I ask myself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is no possibility and 10 means 100% possibility, how likely is this situation to occur? So for example, if I am anxious that for example, like I said, the presentation, I am anxious that I'm going to go blank during my presentation. Ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the chance that I will go blank? Your mind will tell you, okay, maybe a 4, maybe a 5, right? It's not 10. 4 or 5 is still less than 50%. So 50% possibility that I may go blank, 50% possibility that I may not go blank. I may actually do an excellent job, or maybe I will stumble once or twice, but I will still manage to do a great job or an average job. Correct? Going blank is an extreme possibility, which is very unlikely to happen. So the moment you tell yourself, okay, maybe even if 40% also, I'm saying a big number, most of the times your mind will tell you maybe 1 or a 2 that I will go blank, I won't remember anything. Focus on making sure that I avoid that. That's what scaling is all about. I see a couple of more questions.
Yes, ma'am. From Kavita Sharma, she would like to know best technique for separation anxiety in the adult.
Okay. Okay. So in case of an adult who's having separation anxiety, I would recommend some kind of therapeutic work, because it is clearly in this case there is probably the person has not. Other is just somebody has to be there. So depending on that, I would recommend some kind of therapy work, because that clearly means that there is either a complete lack of confidence in myself to be able to handle life on my own without this person being there, or there is a lack of clarity between boundaries and the other person. So that's a deeper work if it is happening in adult, and therapeutic intervention is something.
Okay, and one more question in the chat box itself is getting allergy before performing can be severely anxious.
Yes. Anxiety has research has shown that anxieties and allergies are entirely stress related. For that matter, any kind of skin eruptions, any kind of skin disease comes from some or the other emotional condition. And allergies are known to be stress related. So getting allergy before a performance is clearly a sign of anxiety, severe anxiety. But like I said, some of us have anxiety in our thoughts. Some of us experience it more in the body. For some of us, it manifests more in the body. So this is a case where it is manifesting more in the body.
Hello.
Yes.
I had one question, that when do you know that you need anxiety pills, for example, something like antidepressant or something? How do you know that this is getting too much severe that I cannot manage it with behavioral techniques
Yes.
or any other?
So you don't know this. This decision has to be taken by a medical professional, which is why I said if your anxiety is overwhelming and debilitating enough that you're not able to do what you're supposed to do in life, then talk to a professional. You may want to approach a psychiatrist directly, or you may want to approach a psychologist. If the psychologist diagnoses that it is mild to moderate anxiety, which can work only with therapy and behavioral interventions, she will work with you or he will work with you. when the anxiety goes onto the severe or panic mode, it does require medication. It does require anti-anxiety medication. So that is when they will make a referral to a psychiatrist.
Yes, ma'am. It seems like you have answered some good number of, and I mean,
Yes.
today's session it was like many good number of things were happened. Thank you for the wonderful session, and for this, a wonderful session, I request Subhasri ma'am to propose the vote of time, and request participants please share your feedback as well if you have any queries to my webinar feedback@gmail.com. Subhasri ma'am, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, Samandra. It was a wonderful, holistic presentation about anxiety and how to manage anxiety. And you have given very good tips and also therapeutic strategies you have shared very clearly. We were able to connect with that with the practical examples, and you have really given a very clear and detailed picture. And that was a wonderful presentation from your side. Thanks for making it possible today, that too with this pandemic period and with people with a lot of anxiety. People are thinking about anxiety a lot nowadays. Thank you so much from the Department of Psychology, Madurai American College, and also Madras School of Social Work and MS Chalamuthu Rehabilitation Center and Trust, and as well as Red Pond Academy and other associates. Please accept our gratitude and our wonderful participants who have been traveling, right from April. And thanks for their presence and also making this very interactive session, asking many questions and clarifying. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Samitra.
It was nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Subhasri ma'am, and thank you, Akshaya ma'am, for the welcome, and Dr. Suresh sir, good evening, and thank you so much. I can see Suresh.